Imagine for a moment that every word that leaves your mouth carries a weight. Not just a sound, not just something that disappears into the air, but something that lands and leaves an imprint on someone's heart, on their self-image, on their sense of worth. That's what happens every single time you speak. When you say something kind, it's not just air, it's energy. It lifts, it affirms, it gives life. And when you say something cruel, dismissive, or careless, it doesn't vanish. It settles in someone's chest like a stone they carry long after the conversation ends. Think about the people in your life who built you up. Maybe a teacher, a parent, a friend, or even someone you admired from afar. One sentence from them made you believe in yourself. Maybe it was as simple as, "You're good at this," or "I see something in you." That moment lives inside you, even now. And on the flip side, think about the words that cut you down. Someone said, "You'll never be enough," or "You're not attractive," or "Ooh, do you think you are?" Those words live in you too. You can still hear them. That's the power we're talking about when we say your mouth can kill. It can kill confidence, ambition, joy, and sometimes even a man's very sense of himself. Now, when we bring this into the context of relationships, it gets even more potent, because intimacy amplifies the power of words. A stranger on the street could throw an insult at you, and you might shrug it off in an hour. But when someone you love, someone you've let close, someone you've made yourself vulnerable to, says something cruel, it digs in. It's not just noise, it feels like truth, because it comes from the person who knows you best. That's why partners can be each other's greatest source of strength or their most dangerous weakness. I've seen men transformed by a woman's words. A man who walks into a room with doubts about himself, unsure if he's enough, suddenly stands taller because she whispered, "I'm proud of you." He becomes braver because she said, "You've got this." He goes after opportunities because she reminded him of what he's capable of. And yet I've also seen the opposite. A man shrinks because every time he tries, he's met with, "That's not good enough." A man loses his spark because when he shares a dream, he hears, "That's stupid." He withdraws because the place he hoped to find encouragement has become the place he feels most judged. And here's the thing. Most of us don't even realize when we're doing it. We think we're just being honest. We think we're just keeping them grounded. But behind every little jab, every sarcastic remark, every cutting comment, there's a cost. We like to believe love is strong enough to carry us through anything, but love is not bulletproof against words. Words chip away at it. Words erode trust. Words turn affection into resentment. The irony is, it often starts so small. You roll your eyes when he shares an idea. You laugh at his attempt to impress you. You compare him to someone else without realizing the knife you've just slipped between his ribs. Over time, those little things accumulate. And before you know it, he's no longer the man you fell for because the environment you created with your words suffocated the man he was trying to be. But let's not stay only on the destructive side of this, because if words can kill, they can also breathe life. The same mouth that can destroy can just as easily resurrect. Sometimes it's not even about grand declarations. It's the everyday moments. He walks in the door after a long day, and instead of criticizing what he forgot to do, you acknowledge what he did do. He shares something vulnerable, and instead of dismissing it, you lean in and listen. You celebrate the small wins, you thank him for the efforts, you tell him the things he doesn't even realize you notice. Suddenly, he feels seen, he feels respected, he feels like he matters. And when a man feels that, he gives more, he loves harder, he fights for the relationship. Because he's not fighting you, he's fueled by you. Your words have created an atmosphere where he can thrive, not just survive. Now, you might be thinking, but what if he doesn't deserve it? What if he's not pulling his weight? What if I don't feel like building him up because he's not giving me anything to work with? That's a fair question. But here's the subtle truth: your words don't just describe a man, they shape him. If you constantly speak to the worst in him, you'll keep seeing the worst. If you call out the best, even if it's small, you water it. You give it space to grow. And before you know it, the version of him you wanted starts to show up more often. That doesn't mean excusing bad behavior or tolerating disrespect. It means understanding the incredible influence you have and using it wisely. Words are not neutral. They either build or they break. They either give energy or they drain it. They either create safety or they create fear. And every time you open your mouth, you're choosing which side of that equation you want to be on. So if you truly want to be powerful, if you truly want to master this so-called weapon of the mouth, you have to start with awareness. Because what you casually say in 5 seconds can echo in his head for 5 years. That's the first juicy way your mouth can kill a man. Not through shouting, not through long monologues, but through the simple, everyday choice of how you speak to him. You can build him into the man he dreams of being, or you can dismantle him piece by piece until he barely recognizes himself. The choice, every time, is yours. It's fascinating, isn't it, how the same mouth that can melt someone with a whisper can also cut them to the bone with a single sentence. The same lips that once made him feel like the most desired man in the room can turn around and make him feel invisible, foolish, or unwanted. That's the dual power of seduction and sabotage. 1 minute, you've got the ability to draw him closer, to ignite something inside him with nothing more than a playful tone or a quiet compliment. The next, you can push him away with a sarcastic remark, a dismissive laugh, or that one cutting phrase that goes straight for the jugular. If you think about it, attraction doesn't live in the grand gestures. It lives in the small exchanges, the private moments, the things you say when it's just the two of you. A man doesn't stay connected because of the holiday you took together or the dinner you went out for once a month. He stays connected because of the way you talk to him in the everyday. When you tease him with warmth instead of ridicule. When you play with him instead of belittle him. When you remind him he's wanted instead of making him question it. That's seduction. And it's not about sex. It's about making him feel alive in your presence, like he's still someone worth pursuing even after months or years together. Now, let's be real. Seduction is not hard in the beginning. When everything is new, when you're still trying to impress each other, words flow easily. You compliment, you flirt, you say the things that make his chest puff out and his grin widen. But over time, the novelty wears off, and what replaces it? That's where sabotage sneaks in. Not always intentionally, but it creeps up. You start pointing out flaws more than strengths. You correct instead of encouraging. You focus on what's missing instead of what's present. And before you know it, your words have shifted from drawing him in to pushing him away. And sabotage isn't always about being cruel. Sometimes it's about being careless. The little comparisons, why can't you be more like? The casual put-downs disguised as jokes. The sigh when he doesn't quite do something the way you like it. It may not seem like much in the moment, but repeated over time. They chip away at him. They erode the confidence he once felt with you. They make him second-guess himself in your presence. And ironically, they often lead to the very behavior you resent. You wanted him to step up more, but he shuts down. You wanted him to be more affectionate, but he withdraws. You wanted him to be strong, but your words keep reminding him he's weak. Seduction, on the other hand, is about intentionality. It's about deciding that your words will be an invitation, not a weapon. It's when you say, "I love the way you handle that," instead of, "Why did you do it like that?" It's when you whisper something playful in his ear while you're out, making him feel like you're still excited by him. It's when you give him that look across a crowded room that says, "You're mine," and he feels 10 feet tall. Seduction doesn't have to be elaborate. It just has to be conscious. It's the choice to keep speaking to the part of him that wants to rise rather than the part of him that fears he's failing. Now here's the kicker: sabotage can feel easier. Why? Because it takes no effort to point out what's wrong. It takes no creativity to complain. It takes no vulnerability to roll your eyes. Seduction, on the other hand, requires intention. It requires choosing your words carefully, choosing to nurture instead of nag, choosing to inspire instead of criticize. But the return on that choice is massive. A man who feels seduced by your words, who feels admired and wanted, will fight for you, provide for you, and give you more than you even asked for. A man who feels sabotaged, who feels criticized and diminished, will pull away, shut down, or look elsewhere for the affirmation he's starving for. Think about how many relationships die not because of lack of love, but because of the slow drip of sabotage. Two people who once adored each other start to feel like adversaries, not allies. They stop flirting. They stop saying kind things. They start weaponizing every small annoyance. And then one day, they look at each other and wonder where the spark went. But the spark didn't vanish. It was smothered, slowly, by words that killed attraction instead of feeding it. And I'll tell you something important: seduction doesn't mean never being honest. It doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect or biting your tongue when something really matters. It means choosing how you deliver the truth. You can be direct without being destructive. You can challenge him without humiliating him. You can say, "I'd love it if you did this," instead of, "You never do that." The difference is in whether your words come from a place of pulling him toward you or pushing him away. And men, just like women, are incredibly sensitive to this. He may not say it, but he feels it. He feels when your words make him smaller. He feels when your words strip him of his masculinity. He feels when you stop seeing him as someone to be desired and start seeing him as someone to be corrected. And no matter how tough he looks on the outside, that has an effect. Because at the end of the day, he wants the same thing you want: to feel chosen, desired, respected. So when you think about your mouth as a weapon, remember this: it can kill him by sabotaging his confidence, undermining his masculinity, and making him feel small in the place he most longs to feel big. Or it can seduce him, fuel him, and make him more of the man you fell for in the first place. The choice, as always, is yours. There's something raw and undeniable about the truth. It has a way of slicing through everything else: excuses, masks, bravado, pretense, and landing right where it hurts the most. And when it comes out of your mouth, it doesn't always need volume or aggression. Sometimes the quietest truth has the loudest impact. You know this already because you felt it. You've been on the receiving end of a truth that someone spoke to you, and in that moment, you couldn't dodge it, you couldn't deny it, you couldn't hide behind any shield. It just landed. That's what makes truth such a dangerous, powerful weapon. It can be the cleanest killer mouth ever delivers. Men, in particular, are experts at building armor. They learn early to put on masks: confidence, humor, bravado, even arrogance, to protect the fragile parts they don't want anyone to see. And most of the time, the world accepts those masks at face value. People don't dig deeper, they just take what's presented. But you, as someone close to him, you see more. You see past the performance. You notice the cracks. You know the difference between the front he shows the world and the reality that lives behind closed doors. And that's where your words carry a different weight than anyone else's. Because when you speak truth, he can't just brush it off as noise. He knows you've seen him. He knows you're not fooled. And that truth has the power to shatter the armor he's worked so hard to build. Now, truth isn't always cruel. Sometimes it's necessary, even healing. But make no mistake, it is never gentle. Even when you mean well, truth cuts. You can tell a man, I know you're better than this. And it'll sting, because it forces him to face the ways he's fallen short. You can tell him, you're hiding behind excuses, and it will expose the places he's been lying to himself. You can tell him, and you're not being honest with me, and suddenly all his defenses collapse, because deep down he knows you're right. That's the kind of strike truth delivers. It's not about whether you raise your voice or whisper it. The truth kills illusions. And here's the part most people underestimate: men crave truth even as they fear it. He doesn't want to be lied to. He doesn't want empty validation. He doesn't want you to stroke his ego if it means you don't really see him. Because deep down, even if he resists, he respects the person who's brave enough to tell him the thing no one else dares to say. The danger is, the same truth that earns respect can also devastate him. You can kill his pride in one sentence. You can expose his weakness with one observation. You can dismantle the image he's been clinging to for years with a single, perfectly aimed phrase. Think of the times you've told the truth in the heat of emotion. Maybe you said something you'd been holding back for too long, and in that moment, it came out sharp. You didn't sugarcoat it. You didn't dress it up. You just let it fly. And the silence that followed told you everything. You'd hit the nerve. The way he froze, the way his face changed, the way the air between you shifted. That was the moment the truth pierced through. And it's in those moments that your mouth becomes lethal. Not because you insulted him, but because you said the thing he already knew about himself and didn't want to face. Now, here's the challenge with using truth as a weapon. Once it's spoken, you can't take it back. You can apologize for how you said it, but you can't erase the reality you exposed. If you tell a man, you're not ambitious, he can never unhear it. If you tell him, you're failing me, that statement lives with him long after the argument ends. If you tell him, you don't make me feel safe, that truth doesn't just sting, it haunts. Because these aren't just criticisms, they're verdicts. They shape how he sees himself, how he believes you see him, and sometimes how he decides to show up in the future. That's why truth demands responsibility. It's not about withholding it, but about knowing when, how, and why to use it. Truth can build if you deliver it with intention, or it can break if you unleash it recklessly. You can say, I see you're capable of so much more, and that truth, though painful, calls him higher. Or you can say, you'll never amount to anything, and that truth, whether or not you believe it, crushes him. The same mouth can expose, challenge, and inspire, or it can condemn, diminish, and destroy. And sometimes, the deadliest truths aren't about his failures at all. Sometimes they're about his insecurities. You tell him, I don't feel attracted to you anymore, and it kills his sense of desirability. You tell him, I can't trust you, and it kills his identity as a protector. You tell him, I don't respect you, and it kills his very foundation as a man. These aren't just words. They're truths that dismantle the core of who he believes he is. And that's why, in relationships, truth can be the most powerful form of intimacy and the most devastating form of destruction. But let's not forget the other side of this, because truth, even when it hurts, can also save. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is kill the lies he tells himself. When you say, "You're better than the way you've been living," it may sting, but it wakes him up. When you say, "You're playing small," it may bruise his ego, but it calls him to step into his potential. When you say, "You're not being honest," it forces him to confront the very thing that's holding him back from being fully present with you. In that way, truth kills, but it kills the version of him that was never meant to last. It clears the path for growth, authenticity, and deeper connection. The trick is knowing the difference. Are you speaking truth to wound, or are you speaking truth to awaken? Are you saying it to punish, or are you saying it to challenge? Because once you release it, it has impact. You cannot control how he receives it, but you are responsible for why you chose to speak it. And if you choose to weaponize truth in a moment of anger, understand you may win the battle but lose the war. So yes, your mouth can absolutely kill with truth. It can kill illusions, it can kill bravado, it can kill lies, but it can also kill confidence, security, and connection if you're not careful. And that's what makes this particular weapon so powerful. You can use it to free him, or you can use it to finish him. The choice, once again, is yours. Silence. It's probably the most underestimated weapon you have. We tend to think the power of the mouth is in the words we say, in the clever comebacks, the sharp insults, the declarations that leave no room for doubt. But sometimes it's not about what comes out of your mouth at all. Sometimes it's about what doesn't. Silence, when used deliberately, can be louder than the harshest words. It can be colder than any insult. It can be the strike that leaves someone reeling, because there's nothing to grab hold of, no sound to push back against, just absence. A man can handle your anger. He can handle your words, even if they're cruel, because words give him something to fight with, something to argue against, something to counter. When you're shouting, he's got noise. When you're critiquing, he can defend himself. But when you go quiet, really quiet, that's when the ground falls away beneath him. Silence creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum, he's left with his own thoughts, his own fears, his own insecurities. That's why silence is often more lethal than words. It forces him to listen not to you, but to himself. Think about the moments where silence has shaken you. Maybe someone you loved stopped responding to you, and suddenly you realized how much space their presence occupied. Maybe you sent a message, poured your heart out, and the lack of response was more painful than if they'd cursed you out. That's because silence isn't neutral. It communicates. It communicates distance, disconnection, dismissal. It says, "You're not worth my energy." And in a relationship, that message can feel like a blade to the chest. Now, silence isn't always negative. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes silence isn't about punishment, it's about restraint. Instead of saying the cruel thing you'll regret, you choose not to say anything at all. Instead of escalating a fight, you walk away. That's a form of control, and in those moments, silence protects the relationship. But when silence is used as a weapon, when it's intentional withdrawal, when it's a refusal to engage, when it's used to make him question his place with you, it cuts deeper than most people realize. Men often crave certainty, even if it's certainty they don't like. If you tell him you're angry, at least he knows where he stands. If you tell him you're disappointed, he has something to work with. But silence leaves him in a fog. It makes him doubt, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're planning. It eats away at him because he doesn't know if you're withdrawing temporarily or if you've already checked out of the relationship in your mind. And when a man feels that uncertainty long enough, it can unravel him. There's another side to silence too, the kind that comes not from punishment, but from indifference. When you stop speaking, not because you're choosing restraint, but because you simply don't care anymore. That's the deadliest form of silence. When he cracks a joke and you don't laugh. When he tells a story and you don't respond. When he reaches out and you don't bother to answer. That silence says, "You don't matter enough to move me." And if words can kill a man's confidence, silence can bury it. But silence also has this uncanny ability to magnify everything else. When you withhold words, the smallest gestures become loaded. A sigh, a look, a pause. All of it becomes heavy with meaning. He'll replay those moments in his head over and over, trying to decode what you meant, why you pulled away, what he did wrong. And often, the torture he puts himself through in that silence is far worse than anything you could have said out loud. That's why silence is such a dangerous weapon. Because it lets his own imagination do the damage for you. Here's what makes silence particularly tricky. It can look like power. When you go quiet, you feel in control. You feel like you're holding the upper hand, making him chase you, making him fill the gap you've created. And in some cases, that works for a while. He scrambles to get your attention back. He puts in more effort. He works harder to fix what he thinks he broke. But if that silence becomes a pattern, if it becomes the way you assert dominance in the relationship, it eventually backfires. Because a man can only chase silence for so long before he grows exhausted. And when he does, he stops chasing altogether. He stops trying, and then the silence that once gave you power ends up leaving you with nothing at all. Silence can heal or harm, depending on how you use it. It can give space for reflection, or it can create a void that swallows the connection alive. It can be the pause that prevents words you'll regret, or it can be the wall that shuts him out completely. The difference lies in intention. Are you being silent to protect the relationship, or to punish the man? Are you being silent because you're choosing peace, or because you want him to suffer in the uncertainty of not knowing where he stands? Those are very different motives, and they lead to very different outcomes. But let's be clear. Silence doesn't just affect him. It affects you too. Every time you withhold communication, you also withhold intimacy. You close the door not just on him, but on the connection you share. Because connection isn't built in silence. It's built in the messy, vulnerable, sometimes uncomfortable conversations that force you to be honest with each other. And when you opt out of those moments by choosing silence, you might feel powerful in the short term, but in the long run, you're starving the very thing you want to keep alive. The irony is silence doesn't actually protect you from pain. It just delays it. You might avoid an argument today, but the disconnection builds. You might win the upper hand in this moment, but the resentment grows. You might make him chase you now, but one day the chasing stops. And when it does, you're left with a relationship that looks intact from the outside, but feels empty on the inside. That's why silence is the ultimate strike, because unlike words, which can sometimes be explained away or softened later, silence leaves no record to rewrite. You can't say, "That's not what I meant," because you didn't say anything at all. He fills in the blanks, and the blanks he fills in are often far harsher than the reality. That's why silence lingers. That's why silence kills. The choice, as always, is yours.